Hey there, entrepreneurs. My name is Sushant, and welcome to Treptalks. This is the show where I interview successful e-commerce entrepreneurs, business executives, and thought leaders, and ask them questions about their business story, and also dive deep into some of the strategies and tactics that they have used to start and grow their businesses. And today, I'm really excited to welcome Dean Salakas to the show. Dean is the
Right.
co-founder and chief party dude at The Party People. The Party People is Australia's largest party store, selling balloons, decorations, costumes, novelties, confectionery, theme party wear, and anything else anyone could possibly want for a party. And their goal really is to help people have the best parties of their dreams. And today I'm going to ask Dean a few questions about his entrepreneurial journey and some of the strategies and tactics that he has used to start and grow his business. So Dean, thank you so much for joining me today at Trip Talks. Really, really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Sushant.
So, a very interesting store. I've never interviewed someone who's, who owns a party store. So, can you share a little bit about your background story? What motivated you to get involved with this kind of a business, and what were you doing before starting this business, and how really you got the idea, and what was your motivation to start a business?
Yeah, it's a long story actually, but I'll try to keep it short. So my mum started the business. She was a clown. She used to do kids' parties as an entertainer, and she decided to open up a kids' party store. And yeah, I mean the business grew from there, and we launched online in 1998. Well, she decided to build the store in 98. I think it launched early 99, and we became Australia's first party store. We also launched with Click and Collect, which I believe we were the first Australian business to have Click and Collect. And from there, and I mean, I was in high school at the time. My mum asked me to work out how to do this thing. So I worked with some uni students and we built the site. After school, I went to university, and then after university, I went and worked at a supermarket chain, Woolworths. In logistics. Didn't really have much interest in getting into the family business, to be honest. I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to create my own life for myself, and love the challenge. So I just wanted to get out there and do my own thing. Yeah, and then my parents decided to sell in 2006, and they had a buyer on the table, and my brother and I decided to buy the business because we didn't want to see it. We thought it was a good opportunity. Thought it was going to sell too cheap, to be honest, as well. And yeah, we just saw a real gap, and we thought our complementary skill sets would work really well, which is kind of how it's played out. We made that decision pretty quickly. We bought the business in 2007, and we changed a lot pretty much overnight. And then we saw massive growth, and we focused on the digital and grew the e-commerce side of the business. And yeah, we've had a lot of fun along the way, made a lot of mistakes. But we've kept growing, and very happy with where the business is today, and we continue to grow.
So it seems like this was a family business, and so you were not involved before buying this business at all. Like, you were doing your own thing, you and your brother. And so when you said that you bought this business from your parents, like, can you share a little bit around that? Did you have to spend your own money, and was it kind of like a significant investment?
Yeah, so we bought it. We had worked in the business our whole life. I guess that's probably one thing I would say. Like, even when I went off and worked at Woolies, like, we helped the family out. It was very much a family business, and when they needed us, we were there. And quite often I'd work on weekends for extra money, especially when I was at uni and things like that. So yeah, I definitely my brother and I still sort of always worked in the business. I guess yeah, when we bought it, we had to get a loan to do that, and my parents were very very sort of big on not giving us stuff because that sets the wrong motivation. So they did make us pay for it, which is fair enough. I mean, they earned their retirement, so I think that's they just didn't want to give us a freebie and us not appreciate something. So we did get a loan and bought it, and paid that off pretty quickly. Actually, we did really well off straight away. As soon as we took over, we were running on around 300% growth in that first couple of years. Was really good.
So right now, is your business completely e-commerce, or do you have like retail stores as well?
We got 2 bricks and mortar stores, 2 large format stores. And I believe you're in Canada, so it'd probably be similar to a Party City.
Yeah.
I've been to lots of Party City stores. We definitely are on the larger end of what a Party City would be. I know they've got a range of store sizes, but we would definitely be a large size. I forget the conversion metrics between feet and meters, but you know, our store, one of our stores is 1,000 square meters, and the other's 1,800 square meters. So as you can imagine, they're quite large stores, and you know, they do quite well, and we pick from those stores. So we have our e-commerce operation as well, and they draw that stock from those physical retail outlets.
Can you talk a little bit about the products that you sell, and how does your business really help people in terms of you know, getting the party supplies and really organizing their parties and things like that?
Yeah, look, I guess the key thing like there is, like I mentioned, that there was a large format store. We have all the products you could need under one roof. I mean, similar to Canada, in Australia, you can go to a discount store, you can go to a supermarket, you can go to a department store essentially and get your party supplies. We go deep on the category. So, you know, if you want to go to the local discount store to get some frozen party supplies, you might find at best 50 SKUs, maybe 100. With us, you'll find, you know, 300-400 SKUs in that one category. And, you know, if you're really going to have a party where you want to get everything all at once, and I mean, we're dealing with a category where it's low value per item. So people don't want to be shopping around for every little bit and piece they want for their party. They want to get it all under one roof, get it all done. I mean, you have different types of buying behavior. You have that person who just wants to get it all done. You have the person who is a bit lazy and just can't be bothered and just doesn't care what it costs. Just want to get it done as easy as possible. And then you got that person who wants it to be, you know, an Instagram worthy party. And again, by having the depth of range, we give them the options they need to be able to create that experience for their, you know, for their friends and family.
In terms of the items themselves, I mean, it seems like the business was started by your mom before you. To me, it seems like, you know, she probably created most of the supply chain processes around, you know, where, you know, she buys the products from and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Where do you purchase the product from to manage your costs? Is it mostly really China, you know, Southeast Asian countries? And how has your processes changed over time? Are you also manufacturing something on your own?
Look, when we took over the business, it was literally my parents who worked in the store with one employee. So it was a very small operation, very, very small, and there were no systems and processes, that's for sure. You know, everything was done on just how they did it. There was no procedure manuals or anything like that. And in terms of sourcing, everything was sourced locally when we took over. Again, too small, no scale to be able to draw from overseas. But definitely when we took over, you know, we now I think about 40 employees. So, you know, we definitely have management structures in place. We have systems and processes which are documented and people understand how they work. We have most things are automated to some extent. So we spent a lot of time. So when I said earlier, I went and worked for Woolworths, I worked as a business analyst. I was in process improvement essentially. And, you know, I brought those skills into the business and you know, worked on the business itself. My brother's job as my business partner, so my brother and I are business partners, and his job was operations. So his job was to keep the business running, while my job was to, you know, improve things and find better ways of doing things. Like you mentioned there about sourcing as well, looking at importing where it's appropriate and how we fund and manage that, how we unload containers and all those, anything that's a new process that fell under my purview, I guess, to make sure that as we do these things, that the business was able to manage them and get through them.
So early 2000, mid 2000s, that was kind of really the beginning, I would say, almost of the e-commerce, because at that time, you know, there weren't e-commerce platforms. There wasn't really a lot of, you know, social media was just getting started out. Can you talk a little bit about whose foresight it was to bet on e-commerce at that time, and how have you experienced e-commerce evolve, you know, through the last 15, 20 years? And how, what changes have you made in your e-commerce process and businesses to really capitalize on this big trend?
Yeah, so with the so we launched in '99. Back then, like you said, there was no platform. There wasn't even really much technology around for it. It was, there was no e-commerce people. There were IT people that knew how to code things, which is who I worked with. I worked with a bunch of two IT students that built me something that could be seen on the web, essentially. Um, that's how it worked. In 2003, I left this part out of my story, but we actually became Google Australia's first advertiser. I did while I was at university, I was doing my final year, and in that final year, I did a bunch of, assignments on the business, thesis and stuff like that. And I looked specifically at the process improvement, and with that, Google just happened to be launching in Australia in 2003, and we became their first advertiser. Bing came, I think, a couple of years later, and we also became their first advertiser in Australia. So we kind of got on the bandwagon early, I guess, for everything. When, as e-commerce grew, we were kind of already there. Back when we first launched, obviously in '99, we were getting one order a month, I think, or something like that. And it really wasn't not much happening. But as e-commerce grew, we were kind of there to soak up that growth. And a lot of people talk about us and how we've innovated and that sort of stuff. And we sorry, I'm just going to pause it for a second. Is that all right?
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
Hey, Maya, I'm in an interview. I'm in an interview. Is that all right if we pause it? Okay, you able to cut that out?
Sure. Yeah, no worries.
So
do you want me to
that.
pause it? Or? No, worries. No worries.
No, not now. Sorry, my wife was there and plates were clanging, and I was like, oh man.
No worries. Shall we continue? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to ask the question again, and I'll answer it?
Sure. So early 2000s was really the beginning of e-commerce, right? And
Yeah.
it's so interesting that looking back now, if somebody is looking at e-commerce now, it makes sense. Yes, e-commerce the way of the future. But back then, when the internet bubble was bursting, and a lot of people probably thought that internet was some sort of fad that maybe would go away, or what is e-commerce? Why would someone want to pay online? At that time, I mean, you bet on the e-commerce, right? And
That's right.
you
Yeah.
kind of got started on this. So can you share a little bit about your thought process on, was it at that time, whose foresight was it to say that, online, we can sell online, this could be another channel, and, who took that bet, and, how have you evolved since then?
Yeah. So I don't know how it was in Canada, but in Australia, there was a thing we had called Yellow Pages, which was a directory people used to find businesses. That was where you just spent all your money. That's how it worked back then in the 80s and 90s. You advertised in the directory, and my mum's idea was to launch a website. Her thought process was quite simple. Like you said, today it seems very obvious, but at the time her thought process was just, look, there's people around Australia that don't have access to the products we have. So let's make it visible to them and give them a way of buying those products. We often did mail orders and things like that, so that's kind of part of it. People, she was a working mum, obviously running the business, while looking after two kids. She didn't have time to go shopping, and she also thought there would be a lot of other people in a similar boat that would be working full time, have no time to buy the stuff they needed, and needed to do it after hours, needed to do it at night when we weren't open. So that was a simple sort of thought process around why to launch an online business, and it still applies today, really. Nothing's changed there in terms of why we did it and the convenience for the customer. And obviously we were able to exploit our sales as a result. I mean, like, back then there were no platforms, there were no, there were just two IT, when we built it, we just My mum said, you figure it out. There's some IT students here that know how to do IT stuff. Can you build something that people can see on the World Wide Web? And we did for about 10 grand, which at the time was crazy. Like you mentioned, like back then, the process after the .com just crashed, no one bought anything online when .com took off in the in the 80s and 90s, and then we decided to do it after that crash. And yeah, I mean, I think my mum was sort of very innovative in her thoughts to do that. And then when we when we started looking at it, obviously everything we had to invent. There were no platforms, so we had to build. Like, I mean, I was a business analyst at Woolworths, and I was very savvy with Excel and macros and things like that. So I built my own, shipping software out of Excel. I built my own inventory software out of Access, Microsoft Access, and all these things back then I had to build myself. Now we've got a bunch of plugins today that do it way better than I did it. But the very basics of getting us off the ground and getting an MVP, a viral proposition there was was essentially me building stuff myself in tools like Excel and Microsoft Access.
Are you right now selling mostly in Australia, or have you expanded in any other country, or are you planning to expand it, or just focus on one market and really just capitalize on that?
Yeah, pretty much that. We're focusing on Australia. I mean, we had a little foray into international. We found it very difficult because, we have competitive advantage here. We have scale, we have focus. We found the international markets at this stage were a distraction for us because, going into other markets would be, Canada is an example. If we did go into Canada a little bit, but, it's very hard. We're competing with Party City and we're not on the ground there. They are. They have efficiencies, we don't. So to be able to compete with them, we really don't have a factor that makes us stand out from the local options, which would give people, a reason to buy from us, other than us advertising better than them, which doesn't really make sense. We need to have a better value proposition for the local market to make it worth, getting the synergies and the value out of our advertising in the local market. So we pulled away from that. We focus on Australia, and we're focusing on doing what we well, and we think there's still more market here to grow with. So that's the focus for now.
Okay. So your value proposition in the Australian market, so you said number one, you kind of have the wider range of selection. So if somebody could go to your store and they can get basically everything they want, so they don't have to shop around. That's kind of a big value proposition. Now you have a certain scale, so I'm assuming your supply chain processes, and I mean, are you buying from China now? I'm assuming that gives you a certain edge in terms of managing costs and things like that.
That does. Yeah.
But given that you started in early 2000s and so forth, now I mean these kind of products are probably there's so many competitors even in the Australian market that are available selling it. People can go on probably Amazon Australia and buy these kind of things easily. How has that changed your business in terms of your own value proposition, being competitive in the marketplace? What else do you have to do in order to continue to bring new customers and hold the customers that you have?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, and we probably don't have all day. The answer will take me all day to explain it, I guess, because it's very complicated in terms of managing the the dynamic between the customer need and identifying what that is. And it sounds simple enough, but it's really not. We've figured out what our customer is and where they sit, and it's not as simple as saying anyone who has a party. To some extent, I would say, yeah, that's our market, but we really identify that person who is who needs access to a wide range, who is less price conscious but more interested in service and range. And we've kind of narrowed down what exactly that means in terms of what we do, and it's probably too hard to explain here without getting real technical, but that's kind of what we've narrowed down is what is the market and how are we going to fit to that market. And it's not everyone. If the customer wants to have a party and they want a real budget party and want to save some money, that's not us. We don't run sales. We don't run sale periods at all because that's not our customer. So we don't do it. Conversely, I mean, some customers, will throw a party that's, hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's not us. That's not our customer either. If they want that kind of a service. We really found out what we focus on, and we optimize for that. And if there is a lot of competitors in the market in Australia, and they're all selling similar products to us. I don't think anyone has the breadth of range we have, because it's very difficult to do as well. But the competitors in the market have struggled to find how we make our business model work, and it's almost impossible for me to explain that on this podcast. But it's very hard to make the numbers all work. I mean, everyone who goes into our industry starts off by saying we're going to be the biggest and the best. Then they realize there's cost implications of that, of providing that, and it makes it very hard to be profitable if you don't have your systems and processes very well drilled, and you become very efficient. And like you mentioned earlier about importing, and you really have to have the margins. You have to really have the business efficiency worked out and the gross margins worked out, and being optimized to then be able to compete on a level. So I'd say at the moment, we're ahead of our competition so far that they struggle to compete with us because they can't get to where we are. I mean, anyone can do what we're doing, but to get there is very, very difficult, and they would have to invest a lot of money and lose a lot of money to get there. And it's not all like, I mean, they could do what we're doing and offer the same type of range, but then they've got to have the systems and processes. My brother and I have the skill sets that complement each other to help us get there. It's very hard to get a business that has all the right, the right things working to get it to where it needs to go.
Is most
I don't know
of
if I
your...
explained that well enough. It's a very complicated question to answer.
No, I think I understand. I mean, to me, it seems like it's more of the first mover advantage, right? So you got into the e-commerce market, and your mom started this business, which was kind of, maybe one of a kind in Australia at that time, or something like that. And of course, over time, as you grow, you achieve that, the benefits of scale and, the experience, and you build up the customer base over time. So I think that's that kind of all accumulates to create that, competitive advantage in the marketplace, which is difficult to beat in this kind of a commodity-based business.
Yeah, I guess like just adding to that, I guess to keep it simple, you're right. First mover is very key for us. I do speak a lot at events, and I always talk about how there's 3 ways to win online, and it's being first, being smarter, or cheating. Now cheating's not a good way to go. You get burnt. Being smart is pretty hard, even for us. I mean, I like to think we're pretty smart, but then you're competing against I'm competing in party against all my department stores that have teams of people that are the best out of the best. I'm competing against very smart people, so it's pretty hard to be smart. What we do have is we're a small, medium-sized business that can be agile and be first, and that's our competitive advantage, particularly in retail. Being adaptive is very, very important. The market changed very quickly. We just had COVID. We were able to adapt to that at lightning speed, and extract the most out of that situation. And that's another story for another time. But we went from being 98% down to beating prior year through COVID, through some innovative adaptations during that period. And I think that's a key is in business, you need to be flexible and adaptive. And if you can do that, you definitely can extract value. And like you mentioned, we've had since 1998, we've had 25 years online to learn and adapt. Even if someone replicated our business today, they don't have, and they were very smart, they don't have the experience to execute. A perfect example, and I'm probably getting a bit deep here, but Squid Games came out last year, and we bet real big on it. We went real deep. We went real big on the range, real big on volume. And probably the average layperson would have thought we're being crazy with the numbers we were talking in terms of getting stock. But we've been in the business 25 years. We'd seen these types of movies, releases, come out and what they've done, and we were able to apply that experience to make a forecast on something that's almost impossible to forecast. And we got it pretty right in the end. And Squid Game was huge, and Halloween came, and everyone was buying Squid Games, everything, and we were the only one in Australia that had the stock. And I think experience is also quite a major factor of why we are where we are.
I wonder how AI is going to change that. The whole scenario that the whole scenario that you just described is almost like what right now when people manage a business like this, it's almost like an intuition that you have, right? So you can see some trends in the market and things like that. But
Yeah.
when AI is there, and AI, of course, has access to, let's say, the all the internet and the news, and AI can recognize these trends on a very early levels. Um, and that's somehow connected to e-commerce and supply chain processes. I wonder how that's going to automate it. The
It's
AI recognizes
very
the trends and orders the product and puts the product on the store, and I think it'll be very interesting. Are you using AI in your business at all, or have you started playing with some sort of AI technology in your business already?
We are experimenting, and I probably don't want to talk too much about the secrets that we're currently sort of cutting edge stuff that we're doing at the moment. But definitely AI is something that we are looking at quite heavily. I mean, one caveat I would say is that not for the short to medium term, I don't see, like what you mentioned, that AI will be automating the process. So, I don't think we'd be saying to AI, hey, figure out the trend and order the stock and make it happen. I don't see us getting to that point because AI can make mistakes based on the data. It's based on the data input, and data inputs need some, level of filtering. And I think at the moment only a human can do that and make that emotional decision. So I think at the moment, definitely we're not seeing a risk of, automating that sort of stuff. But I definitely think like AI is a massive opportunity for any business in any category. It's about, I mean, anything. Like we've seen, our business has innovated all the way along the journey, and we just see change as an opportunity, not as a problem. So I think AI can be seen as a bit of a risk for a lot of businesses, but it should also be seen as the opportunity that needs to be tackled very quickly, get an understanding of it, and get an understanding of how you can best use it to compete. Because I really don't know where it's going to go. It's really hard to see how this is all going to play out with AI because I'm using it, and I might be first mover, but when everyone else is using it the same way I'm using it, then what level of advantage do I have? I mean, just as simple example, if I get AI to create a web page for me, but everyone does that, then we're all going to have the same web page, or it's all going to be. It's not, even if we can get AI to write all those web pages different, and everyone gets a different web page, it's still going to be optimized. So how is if we're all writing SEO web pages using AI, how is Google going to outrank one versus the other when we're all writing perfectly optimized content? So I'm really not sure how it's all going to play out, but definitely at the moment, since everyone's not using it, I think those businesses that are using it will get massive gains early on, and potentially first mover advantage in certain areas.
Yeah, it's very early on, still early on, and it's difficult to predict what's going to happen. Maybe it will lead to the perfect competition where uh, every consumer gets the best pricing and the best product for them that they want, and maybe that's going to level playing field for for a lot of businesses. I mean,
It's
who
certainly
knows?
not going to help the race to the bottom on pricing, that's for sure. Which is what we're seeing more of here in Australia. With we've got Amazon here now, and marketplaces are having a major impact on the retail market. And more recently, I mean, I think America and North America are much more mature than us in that department with Amazon. Amazon's only been here, I don't know, a couple of years now, and they really haven't made huge inroads. eBay's still our #1 marketplace here in Australia. So, I think AI is going to really mess with that whole model, and that's going to be in the next frontier. And I think you're right. We're getting to the point of consumers having perfect information, and how that impacts business. I'm really not thinking that far ahead at the moment, but it's definitely it's where it's going for sure.
Do you sell on marketplaces at all, like Amazon, eBay, etc.?
Yes, we do. Yep. And it's a reasonable market for us as well.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about your marketing? I know at the beginning you talked a little bit about, you were the first advertiser on Google and Bing and so forth. And now with more and more competitors in the marketplace, how has your marketing evolved? And how has your cost of customer acquisition changed over time? And what is working now as opposed to what was working in the past?
Yeah, tough question again. I could talk all day. Since we've been online so long, it's changed so much over the last 20 years. But look, when we launched online in Google in 2003, it was 1 cent a click. You know, I mean, people listening to this will freak out when they hear that. So it really wasn't difficult to market. It was like market to everything we could, even things that we didn't sell, we'd market to. It was so cheap. So back then it was very different. You know, now we're looking at much higher cost to advertise. It's a saturated market. Many competitors willing to lose money to get market share. So it makes it very difficult. I mean, our approach has always been more of one of consistency and of a business model that's profitable. So we don't chase volume, we chase profit. And so, you know, we have a formula that works for us in terms of our advertising budget and spending and conversion rates. And, you know, we do all the math to make sure that everything's paying a profit, which I can tell for sure that some competitors in my category are not. And as a result, yeah, they might be getting the volume, but they also, I mean, the obvious statistic is when you see how often they appear in the top position, those guys that advertise in the top position, as an example, like they might appear in the top position, but they only appear there 5% of the time because their budget caps out, which means it's not profitable. You know, where for us, we appear in that average of around position 3, I would say. But we appear like 95, 98% of the time. And that's just because our formula works. So we're just happy with position 3. I'd love to be position 1 on every keyword that we advertise on or every social campaign we run. But at the end of the day, it's not profitable. So we don't want to do that. So we're happy to sit in the position that actually is profitable. And that's, I think, been another sort of key to our longevity, is that we've always run a profitable business and always chased profit over, you know, we just have no desire to chase sales, only a desire to chase profit. Yeah, I think that's one thing. In terms of how it's changed, look, obviously, like over the time, social media has become a bit of a factor. Look, for me, it's a bit easier to say this as I'm bigger, but a startup would have a little bit more of a challenge negotiating the difference between building a brand versus building, you know, focusing on conversion. You know, when we first started growing online, our focus was conversion only. You know, more recently, we do focus a little bit more on brand. Hence, I'm, you know, here doing this podcast with you as one example. But, you know, we definitely focus on brand, and some money goes towards the brand because there is an understanding of you know, a payback over time. So, look, it's very difficult question because marketing is a very complicated area today than it was when there was only yellow pages for us 30 years ago. But, yeah, I mean, we advertise in a lot of places. And again, it's just about making sure that everything meets that formula, whether it's email marketing or social media or even just marketplaces. I look at marketplaces more as an advertising, more as a marketing play than a volume play, you know. And I think, you know, keeping that in mind and making sure that everything hits that formula. I mean, marketplaces, back to that, like, I mean, it costs us, you know, a percentage to give the marketplace money to advertise our product, which means that, to me, that's an advertising spend to pay their fee. So, you know, just making sure that everything is profitable is a key factor in terms of marketing for us. And we're in a lot of places, whether it be social, search, email marketing, I don't know what else there is. We're doing a few other things, marketplaces. Yeah, I mean, when you talk social, it's, again, a very deep topic, whether it's posting on groups, whether it's how you manage your page and what you're posting on your pages. All those things are slightly separate factors.
In the last 25 years, I'm sure, I mean, you probably do have a certain level of brand recognition in the Australian market. Do you do some sort of a study to kind of measure that brand recognition and what benefit it brings to your business? Because I'm sure, you know, people who recognize your brand, you know, that kind of saves your marketing dollar, right? So
Yeah.
they see your ad and they know, yes, there's a certain trust there, there's a certain brand value, so they can click on your website and come and shop. What do you do
definitely,
to?
we don't do anything to measure it. We don't look out for it. I mean, we've been around so long, and in Australia, we're quite well known. Look, it's very rare I mention someone where I'm from and they don't know the company. It almost never happens here in Australia. Most people say, "Oh, I've heard of you guys before," even if they don't use us or haven't used us, they still have heard of it. We do a lot of PR, a lot of brand marketing, if you want to call it. So, I mean, we appeared on Shark Tank, Shark Tank season 1 here in Australia as an example, and a few million people in the country saw that, which is, given we only 30 million people, is quite a large percentage of the population has seen me on Shark Tank. So yeah, we've got some pretty good brand recognition here in the local market.
So what was the rationale behind going to Shark Tank? Was it really purely just for the views, or how did you end up on Shark Tank?
Yeah, no, that was good fun. I mean, we were interested in raising at the time. In hindsight, we probably wouldn't have been able to raise, but at the time, the rationale was to try to raise some money, and we received an offer and we turned it down because we didn't think it was good enough. But I guess, yeah, we look as a market. I mean, definitely there was some thoughts that there would be some marketing out of it for sure. I didn't realize it would be as big as it was. Over 1 million people saw the first run of that it went, and then it reran 3 times, and now it's still up there on YouTube. It's still getting views by the day, so it's it was a great marketing exercise, as well as we thought we'd raise capital. I'd say in hindsight we wouldn't have got it done with what we're expecting from the show, but we were a bit naive at that point. It was quite many years ago.
Awesome. Can you talk a little bit about your team? I know you mentioned that, when your parents were running the business, they only had one person. And you shared, you and your brother kind of manage different areas of business operations versus you're more of a business person. How has your team evolved, and what area of your team is the biggest? Is it really the marketing? Is it operations? Is it the store management?
Yeah, definitely the operations, which is what my brother manages, is the biggest component of the team. He's got, I think something like 30 something of the 40 staff within the company report somewhere through to him. He has one person that reports to him technically, but obviously he's quite heavily involved in what happens below that. So yeah, that's the bigger part of the team, is operations. I'm support, if you want to call it that. Everything that's not operations is the easiest way to explain it. So finance, marketing, e-commerce, that growth, that all sort of comes through me. So the division of responsibility is quite clear. Yeah, obviously with a bigger team, with my team, they report directly to me, each of them. So none of my team really manage anyone, so I manage them directly. I mean, my accounting and finance team have some people under them, but otherwise most people report directly to me, so I have a more direct contact with my team. Where my brother in operations, he's an operations manager, he has store managers. Underneath that is the people that execute, and yeah, it's very different set of management that happens between us, and team building. A very different type of team. I mean, I've got a support team, which are, if you want to call it, head office type team, which, half of them work from home. Some of them work from different stores on different days. It's a very different, flexible, remote style of team I have. And I see some regularly. I see some hardly at all. Like my e-commerce guy, I hardly see him. I might see him once a year, maybe twice a year. But and then my buyer and my inventory manager I see almost every week. So it's a very different style for me. With him, he's managing operations, so it's much more hands-on with the senior team, and then they're rolling stuff out to the local team, and then he's trying to get out there and see what's actually happening and try to make sure he understands what's happening from a business point of view, so that when I come up with these fun projects that I come up with from a growth perspective, that he's got his finger on the pulse and can help make sure that I don't destroy the business in the process of trying to grow it, essentially.
I think that's a good partnership. Someone who can actually see the business at a higher level, and someone who is actually managing the business. Is your marketing, is it in-house? I mean, it seems like if you only have one person, or are you working with like agencies who kind of execute your marketing?
No, it's all in-house. I mean, with people like Google and things like that, you do have account managers at Google. So, we do have some support from the service provider. But yeah, it's all in-house at the moment. Something we've looked at agency, but I just struggle with the agency model, to be honest, in how you pay someone that you're trying to be competitive on something that's already marginally squeezed in terms of outcome. Then to have to pay someone in between is very difficult.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, agencies, it's like for some businesses it works, some for other businesses it doesn't. It's definitely a very challenging relationship and topic. Um, in terms of your, I mean, e-commerce business, a big challenge is of course the fulfillment aspect of it, right? Like it's like, especially with the kind of products that you're selling, which is kind of like the low value kind of items, right? Are you, I'm assuming you charge the customer the shipping expenses, right? Can you talk a little bit about your fulfillment and logistics and how does everything run in your business?
It's a good question you're asking. Look, it's very much a moving target right now. We currently fulfill in-house from store, and we also fulfill from a 3PL. We fulfill our website volume from store because our average order basket is quite big. Customer comes in and they're having a Frozen party or a Disney princess party or whatever it is. They buy, an average of 15 items and they put in their basket, and they check out for an average of about $100. With marketplace, the average basket is about 1 to 1.5 or something like that, depending on the marketplace. So the average person basically buys one thing. And we're talking about orders that are averaging around $20 to $30. Very hard to make money for us with the way we operate. So as we see it, we've got a level of competitive advantage to be able to pick large baskets, but we don't have the we can't beat an automated warehouse to pick individual SKUs for individual orders. So we leave that to the 3PL because what they charge us is less than what we can do in-house. But we figured out that we can pick in-house much more efficiently than the 3PL will charge us, so we keep that volume. But it is changing. We are looking at some automation and processes that we can bring in-house to make us competitive with a 3PL in terms of cost to pick. And if that is the case, then we'll bring it in-house, because obviously from owning the customer and the service point of view, as much as we can have in-house, the better.
Do you in this business, do you have a returns policy, and is there a big return
No,
component of this
not
business?
much.
No,
very
okay.
small. Yeah, very small.
So you do charge the customer for the shipping for the most part, right?
We do. We don't have a free shipping option actually, which
Okay.
some people think is crazy, but in my industry, it seems to work for us. Again, like I mentioned, we chase profit, not sales. So I mean, you definitely having free shipping would increase our sales, but I can't do the math on how free shipping would be a profitable decision for us, given how much, as an example, I think if we give up free shipping, for every $100,000 of shipping we recover, we still have to generate $1 million more in sales, which I just don't. I just can't see that happening. Us offering free, we'd have to basically double our sales to offer free shipping, and I don't see that being the outcome.
Okay. Given that now you have a certain level of scale and customer base, do you ever think about diversifying your business or adding another website with a different kind of adjacent product offering, or maybe adding other categories? How do you see your business evolving in the future, and let's say 5 years down the road? Do you still want to continue focusing on the same exact products, same business, and really just getting more customers in the Australian market, or are you thinking about like diversifying or changing your business in any way?
Yeah, it's a challenging question. I'd say, look, we're always looking at the way we change our business, 100%. You know, it's an evolving business at the moment. And it's really hard to say. It's a very much a subjective decision that we make ongoing on different aspects of the business, whether they're core business or peripheral, and whether we need to focus. So, you know, often we're asking ourselves the question about whether we should be cutting something because we should be focusing more on other parts of our business. And you know, as entrepreneurs, we're very guilty of new ideas being exciting, and you know, being excited and pumped and having the desire to do them. But then, you know, given a few days and a few conversations, we start realizing that they potentially, and given our experience of, we've tried so many things over the years that, you know, the question always comes up, is this going to be a distraction for us? And if the answer is yes, like a great example is pop-up stores. We did a Halloween pop-up store with Halloween Alley there in Canada. We did a JV with them and did some pop-up stores here in Australia. They were good, and they were a fantastic business for us, and they were working really well. COVID, to be honest, killed that business because we just got the model right just before COVID, and then COVID came along and meant that we couldn't do it for 3 years. Now we're at the stage whether we want to ask ourselves, do we want to restart that business model? And the amount of energy and strategic distraction that it would create, for now, the answer is no. As much as we would really like to, and I know we would benefit and we would make money from that venture, the answer is no, because it's just a distraction to the core business where there's a huge you know, a big opportunity at lower risk. So yeah, it's very hard to decide when not to do new things, and yeah, I really don't have a scientific answer for you on how we make those decisions. It's more about just going through the motions of, you know, first of all, do we think this is a great idea? And quite often the answer is always yes. How much of a good idea? And then usually we start looking at the risks, and that's where it really gets sorted out of, you know, oh, look, is this something we really, or how close to core business it is. You know, we often look at businesses that are completely outside our, you know, our industry and go, well, we can make that work, we could do that, but it's just a distraction and it's not core business. So we don't go there, you know. It's a really hard one to answer, that one.
Yeah. I mean, identifying, you know, when you have something working, it's difficult to think about risk and, you know, new things. So yeah, it's definitely difficult.
I mean, you constantly got to ask yourself the question of what's you know, new things and testing. And I mean, we're trying an augmented reality mirror coming up. So, you know, we've ditched the concept of a pop-up store, which obviously we've tried and we know works for us, and still not deciding not to do it, versus for some reason we're trying this augmented reality mirror where people can try on costumes in a shopping center, and then our e-commerce will fulfill that order. So they stand in front of the mirror, they try on their costumes just by waving their hands, and virtually tries it on them on the mirror. Some people might have seen these augmented reality mirrors, but I believe it's a global first to be e-commerce enabled. So the mirror, you can check out on the mirror, and then we'll ship the item to your home. Once you get home from the mall, it should be there, hopefully, depending on how long you're at the mall. You know, and we're trying something like that. That's you know, that's kind of a distraction in a way, but at the same time, we see huge upside, huge scale opportunity, great synergy with the core business, because really it's an e-commerce backend in terms of fulfillment. So really it's just about deploying mirrors with a separate team. So we're giving it a go. I don't know, will it work, will it not? I think it will. I think it's pretty cool, but you know, we don't know until we try and see if the business model stacks up and see what the economics are of this project. And yeah, so this Halloween we'll be going ahead with that and giving it a trial in one shopping center. So that'll be pretty fun. Maybe we'll touch base after that. I'll give you an update.
Definitely. I mean, that sounds pretty cool, to be honest. I know we're kind of running out of time. Every entrepreneur has, I wanted to ask you very quickly. So your website, are you running on Shopify now, or is it still kind of your custom developed site?
No, we've probably redeveloped 2, maybe 3 times over the years. That still is a very old site that you see there. As much as I say that, it's an old Magento 1 site.
Oh, wow.
Magento
Okay.
1 Magento 1 Enterprise, which is no longer supported. So we are looking to migrate sometime soon to some sort of new platform. I'm not really sure where we'll end up. We're definitely looking at platforms like Shopify Plus, Magento 2, BigCommerce. I'd say they're the front runners at the moment in terms of the ones we're looking at.
Okay, cool. In every entrepreneur's journey, there's always mistakes made, lessons learned, during your, running your business, growing your business. I mean, of course, you have more than 25 years experience with this business. What has been maybe, I mean, I'm sure there's so many things you can talk about, but
25 years of mistakes, there's definitely, you can say it. There is 25 years of mistakes, so definitely there is. So
what kind of, I mean, let's talk about it in this way, like your own journey as an entrepreneur or a business person, let's say, right? I mean, you've had to grow over time to be able to, run a growing business. What kind of growing experience as an entrepreneur you have had to go through? That could be people management, that could be, anything. That was kind of a learning experience that you were not doing before, but now you had to evolve or learn in order to become the next level of entrepreneur.
Yeah, look, I'd say I'll probably go through two separate things, personally and then the business. From a business point of view, probably the biggest learning experience we had was to plan. I know it sounds so fundamental, but forecasting and planning is something we didn't do to start with. And I don't think many small businesses really do. They just say, look, I'll work it out as I go. That's an entrepreneur. That's how your entrepreneurial brain thinks, right? It's just like, I'll figure it out, I'll figure it out as I go. That's how your brain works as an entrepreneur. And you've really got to get out of that mindset. And you've got to start saying, okay, where is this business going? What do I need in the future? And have I got it? What are the risks? What happens if we do better than I expected, which is what happened to us in the early days when we were doing 300% growth. We weren't ready for that growth. And that killed us. That hurt us big time. We had to shut down the website at points because we're getting too many orders, and it was a disaster. And, and you really need to start thinking ahead and planning. And it's easy for me to say, and I think most people will probably disregard what I'm saying and then get stuck on have the exact same issue. And they'll be like, oh, that's what that guy was talking about. But you really need to plan. You really need to forecast ahead. And you need to stop, because as an entrepreneur, you're so busy. You're always chasing the next thing, or you're trying to get ahead, or just you're always going to be doing more than you can possibly need, and you just don't have time for planning. You have to. If you don't, you will get caught out, and that's what happened to us a couple of times, and we learned our lesson the hard way. That's probably from a business point of view. From a personal point of view, it's probably on a similar tangent, which is, as an analyst, and I'm the techie geeky guy in the business. It's very easy for me to have the blinkers on, focused on what I'm doing, which is why I can be good at doing what I'm doing, is because I don't get distracted by the noise, and I can work through a problem by focusing. But that also creates blinkers that I miss what's going on around me, and I can be spending weeks on, being driven to complete something and not missing what's actually happening in the broader business, which is where my brother comes in. So that's why it's great that I've got that that yin and yang we've got in our business, where he'll pull me aside and say, what are you doing? Get your head out of the sand and have a look at what's going on around you. And it's like, I'm too busy right now, I can't. He's like, no, you need to stop. You need to deal with what's going on in the operation. You need to fix that and then come back to what you're doing. And, it seems so simple, but it is really hard to do. It is really hard to do when you're focused on getting things done and trying to prioritize your workload and say, well, what, I guess I've gone the long way around, but the idea of prioritizing between the future and what you're trying to build versus fighting the fires of today. And it's really hard to work out, when do you stop fighting fires and start building long-term solutions for those fires? And at what point do you just fight the fires? And that's really hard to do when you're in the details. Sometimes you really do just have to stop and fight fires till you get to a point where you can get past them and then start working on solutions to those problems. But other times, it's unfortunate to say you might as well let the business suffer for a short term so that you can get that long-term solution in place. And as an entrepreneur, I guess that's the hard part about taking it from a 1 or 2 man operation where you're just doing everything and you don't need to fight any fires because you fight them yourself and you fix things yourself, to having a business that has processes, procedures, and is running by itself. you know, you need to build processes and procedures, and you need to fix them when they break too. So, you know, you've got to focus on the business a lot and not focus on fighting fires sometimes, but other times, you know, your business will go under if you don't fight those fires. So I've got my business partner there to kick me in the butt when I've got the blinkers on and make sure that I'm focusing on the right, that I realize when things are out of control.
Definitely. I mean, those are some great lessons for any business to know as well. Now I'm going to move on to our rapid fire segment. In this segment, I'm going to ask you a few quick questions, and you have to answer them maybe one word or a sentence or so. So, one book recommendation for entrepreneurs or business professionals, and why?
The 1 Minute Manager. It's a good book on managing people and managing different people differently. A bit what I explained earlier around some of my people work from home and some don't, and some I see a lot and some I don't. That a lot of that understanding has come from that book.
Awesome. An innovative product or idea in the current e-commerce, retail, or tech landscape that you feel excited about?
Oh, well, definitely the augmented reality is going to be a hit, I reckon.
For sure. Sounds like a very interesting idea. A business or productivity tool or software that you would recommend, or a productivity tip?
Definitely, I reckon people have to have like a project management, task management tool. We use Asana. I know some people use Jira and other things, but I think every business needs a tool like that to help them manage. You know, it's really, I mean, we only got a short question, but to explain why you need it would be probably another webinar. But yeah, you definitely need it to help manage your team. And my team, since we put it in place a few years ago, it's made things so much better internally for us.
Yeah, it's so
Painful to
interesting.
start with, painful to get it off the ground because people just don't have natural use, want to use it, and change is scary sometimes internally. But oh man, people love it now. Our team loves it.
Yeah. I mean, so many businesses use Asana. I mean, it comes up again and again. Um, a startup or business in e-commerce, retail, or tech that you think is currently doing great things.
Augmented reality mirror, I guess I could go back to. I think Scan and
Another
Go Tech is
start.
pretty cool too. Yeah,
Okay.
Scan and Go Tech. I'm a pretty big fan of Scan and Go Tech as well.
Okay. A peer entrepreneur or business person whom you look up to, or someone who inspires you.
Oh, one. There's many, I would say, many, and I like small to medium retailers in my industry. There's one here in Australia called Julie Mathers. She's an entrepreneur that's grown an eco-friendly brand and just keeps doing amazing things, and I've just seen the journey.
Awesome. Final question. Best business advice that you ever received or you would give to other entrepreneurs?
Definitely the best advice I've received was about personal branding, was to, you know, spend time focusing on your personal brand. When we first started off, I didn't care about, and most people do that build a business. They're building a business. They're not worried about their ego or their personal view of what people think of them. And so when I started out, we were the same. We just wanted to kick ass and didn't really give a shit about what people thought of us or cared, or didn't even care to be in the media. I got advice to say, focus on your personal branding and build your personal brand. It's been great for my business because now I'm out there in the media talking a lot and putting my face out there and getting in doing podcasts whenever I can. And that's great for business. It's fun, you know. It's fun to have a chat with you today, and it's fun to do it, and it's good for business. You know, people who hear this podcast, hopefully some of them come and buy some products from me. You never know. Obviously, that's not the main driver, but you know, just being out there as much as you can, and shouting from the rooftops what you do and telling people about it is important for your business. And I would, you know, tell entrepreneurs to forget the ego. It's don't worry about people thinking it's about your ego. Go and shout it from the rooftops and tell everyone about what you're doing.
That's such an interesting idea. I never thought about that because a lot of business people are kind of like they don't want to be the face of the business. I mean, of course, the other side of it, you know, an entrepreneur like Richard Branson, who's kind of, you know, who leads, you know, from personal branding and being the kind of the cheerleader of the business. But yeah, it's very interesting advice. Well, thank you, Dean. That was awesome. Really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time today, for sharing your story, for sharing how you grew your business, your entire e-commerce journey, challenges, successes, and so forth. So yeah, thank you so much again for joining me today at Trip Talk, and wish you all the very best.
Thanks so much for chatting. Hopefully a few people
Awesome.
got some value. Cheers.
For sure. Let me see.